No Jumper, coolest podcast in the world. We're back for another round with a living legend himself, X-Rated in the building. How you feeling, G?
I'm feeling fantastic, man. Here we are again, my guy.
Hey, very happy to see you, man.
Yes, sir.
Yeah, we it was almost 4 years ago, I think, that we last sat down, and you had only been out for like 14 months at the time, I believe.
Yeah, I still smelled like prison body wash at the time.
You were still saying a lot of recently released shit about how every single little thing was giving you joy.
Yes. Yeah, I'm still in that state though.
Okay.
Yeah, I'm still feeling that.
Okay.
But I've been on a mission. I told you I wanted to get 5 years out of every year so I can get my 25 years back in the 5-year period. And I did that. I feel like I'm nearing wrapping up, getting my 25 back out of it. I want 5 years out of every year I lived. I want my time back.
Okay, but does that involve living hard or living peacefully? Or, I mean, for me, it's like if I was going to try to live 25 years in 5 years, it's a lot of drugs. It's a lot of pussy.
It was a lot of drugs and pussy in the first 2 years. I was in Las Vegas as headquarters.
Okay.
So I had enough. I feel like the story in Ecclesiastes where he's like, chasing the wind. I did all that shit. I went and got all the pussy. I did all the drugs. I drank all the alcohol. And now that shit.
Yeah, how long did it take you to get kind of sick of that?
That's a bit of an exaggeration, of course.
Right.
But I say I say shit got real in about 2021. Shit got real. And I started understanding. I had a moment in November. I remember the exact date it was. It was November 11th of 2021.
Okay.
I was in Massachusetts. I got called out there for a specific thing. I did some G shit.
Specific thing sounds like you were
Sinister.
Taking some risks.
Yeah, I took a couple chances on behalf of one of my brothers. Somebody made a threat that they shouldn't have made. So I jumped on a plane, flew out to Massachusetts, popped up on my bro. So there was a show. Tech was headlining the show. And there was it was a lot of drinking going on. I saw a lot of people doing a lot of things, but the most successful person was not doing any of those things. And I was paying attention to that. I had about 4 Long Island iced teas in me at that moment.
Okay.
But I think I got that under control. I feel like I did, but who knows what it looked like to somebody else.
Okay.
But I had enough of an awareness to see how other people were behaving and see how the most successful person in my vicinity was behaving.
But Tech N9ne's not the most successful person in this?
He was definitely the most successful person.
Okay.
Yeah.
But you were observing
20 million
him?
a year.
That's what I'm thinking, yeah.
Definitely qualifies as...
In that world, Tech N9ne's basically the dude.
Yes. Yeah, that's a factual statement.
Right. He's been doing it a long time. He built a crazy-ass business.
He did.
Yeah.
Yeah, and he's a dope-ass person, though. So
right,
there's that. So what I see is this dope-ass successful person and his business partner are exhibiting behaviors that I wasn't exhibiting, but these are levels that I strive to. And they were affording me the opportunity to be near that and in it and participating.
Right.
And so I cold turkey. That was my last drink. That was my last even vape. I watched him do 90 minutes. And I thought, you're not doing all that, doing what everybody else doing. You're not. I want to do 90 minutes on stage. I need to be ready to go.
Right.
And so I cold turkeyed all that shit. No vapes, no cigars, no weed, no alcohol, nothing. I definitely went back to the weed though.
Yeah, that's a tough one to kick.
I'm not kicking it.
Yeah, me neither. Not until the doctor tells me that I got to.
Man.
And even
Me
then,
and the doc gonna have to have a talk.
take him out back.
I'm keeping my indica.
But did you have to handle anybody on this journey out of town?
No, but that's what I was there for, and that person made some good decisions for himself and his friends, and so we went on about our business and all as well.
Okay.
Yeah.
But what was your relationship with Tech N9ne prior to all this?
At that point, for months, it was solid. It was very solid. Yeah. So like I went, me and Brother Lynch Hung had a show in Kansas City on June 11th of 2021. I get to town and, phones start blowing up from little homies from the streets. Ironically, I call them Tech N9ne's Crips. All the Crips calling me, talking about, man, Tech looking for you. And I was like, you tell them to call me. Or like, I just I was there to do what I was doing. I didn't necessarily think he was or wasn't. So I was doing me. I didn't know him like that to know that he that type of motherfucker. You know what I mean?
Right.
And so I go about my day. I finally get a call from the homie Trez. And like Trez is somebody that I respect. And it's my little brother, you know what I mean? So I take Trez call. Trez was like, man, where you eating at? What you about to do? How you moving? I'm like, I'm gonna go to this spot, blah, blah, blah. And he was like, I'll be there in 15, Tech will be there in 30. I was like, all right, you know, now pull up. I got the boys with me. Everybody strapped up. We in this restaurant. And Trez walked in there, and about 15 minutes later, Tech walked in that motherfucker glowing like Bruce Leroy.
Really?
Yeah.
He had an aura about him?
Yes. Yeah.
You think
he still has
success or just focus?
Goodness. Goodness, like, dopeness. He reeks of it.
See, it's interesting to me to imagine how you might fit in with the Tech N9ne on the road circus, etc. Because when I think about you, it's like you're coming from Northern California, Sacramento. Obviously, you're wrapped up in the gang shit. Then you go in, you do 20-something years, and then you come out, and it's like, I just feel like Tech N9ne's universe is just probably got its own cultural norms. It's got its own flavor. Yeah. Did you fit in from the beginning, or it's an interesting?
I don't necessarily want to fit in, and I think that's an advantage for me. I don't perceive myself to need to fit in. I'm willing to accept everything that organically blends in with what I do, but whatever doesn't, you know. And I was paying attention. My big brother Lynch Hung, was over there, you know, prior to me. I had some of his input. I kind of had an understanding, and with me watching him blending in or not blending in. And at the time, Tech was on his King of Darkness trip, which is closer to what we were doing anyway, as from us coming with Season of the Sickness, Exorcist. Right. That was more in line with what we were doing at the time that Lynch was around. So I think we service two completely different audiences, you know what I mean? And he come from the 50s, he really from the 50s. So they red ragging out there, and I come from 24th Street, Garden Block Crib, 29th Street, 21st Street, 914, South Side. So it kind of like is a union. It brought two different groups of people together who may not have necessarily functioned together. So I was aware of that. And it's like when J-Rock and Top Dog were at Strange Music, and Kendrick had his affiliation over there. I always perceived them to be among without being of, if that makes sense. You know what I mean? And so like J-Rock, really Westy, you know, certified, like really that kind of person. And I got a lot of respect for him, so I watched the way he conducted himself in that experience, and it kind of informed me about how I could successfully navigate it as well. So I've utilized a lot of that.
Did it immediately open you up to a different fan base?
Yeah, it did. It exposed me to a level of professionalism that was absent from how I was moving. I think that's what if anything, he taught me was the professionalism and the level that I needed to be aspiring to, while still being honest about who I am, being organically me at the same time, which was hard to do on Parole anyway. Right. So I'm like, on Parole, I'm a lifer. So if you're a lifer, when I got out, which is something that is a pet peeve of mine, when people talk about prison experiences who were not lifers and have all these opinions, and then you don't have lifers because we're lifers. So it's not normal for us to get out to tell people what it's like to be a free lifer.
But did you ever have life, or?
I had life. I was serving life in prison. Okay. I had an indeterminate sentence. So I had 31 years to life. Okay. And all that means is that I have to serve 80% of that 31 before they could think about if they wanted to possibly let me go. Right. And at the time of my arrival, only 3% of people were having that experience. So being a lifer, when you get out, you still a lifer. So if I run a red light, they pull me over, they don't like how I'm acting, I go straight back to prison with a life sentence and sit there until they decide they want to pull me back in and decide if whether or not I need to stay there. So I walked on eggshells for a long time because I was still a lifer, you know.
It's crazy for me to imagine what that must feel like for you, because you've obviously, like, just when you get out, you've kind of beaten one of the worst possible outcomes for you as a human being. And part of you, if I was you, part of me is going to want to just stay in the house, be extremely careful. And then the other part of you, like you're saying, you're going out, you're drinking, you're having a good time, and like you want to make up for all this living. But I mean, the more you're outside the house, the more you're drinking in public, the more you're doing all that shit, the more likely it is that something's going to happen. Not to mention, obviously you can't just have it on you like the way that you used to. And so knowing that there's a lot of other people who got it on them, that's got to be like a really tough choice to make. And you have like no experience with the real world for the last 25 years, etc. So it's like you're almost not really like even fit to make that decision because you don't know what situations you need to be 100% careful in, etc. Like, it's such a learning curve of getting back to the real world. I mean, it just seems like such an incredibly hard puzzle to figure out.
I think the way we simplify it is the assumption is that like everybody on AG, that got to be assumed.
Right.
Everybody on AG, so I'm going to be on mine too. Lawyer fees are cheaper than funerals, in my opinion. You know, and I'm not talking literal dollars. So certain circumstances, I was more willing to. I need to still be alive on Earth.
Right.
So if whatever that required, that's what it was. And so I'm blessed that I've been met with an extreme amount of love, and I want to be clear about that because I think that's the most gangster thing that I could say. It's always going to be people who care about how I'm doing and what happens to me. There always were people who cared. And so me associating with known gang members would have put me back in prison.
Right.
But these are my family members. These ain't friends of mine or people that I got jumped on a set and I was from around the corner. Like, these are my family members.
But does that explanation work with a court?
Not necessarily with a parole board if they don't want it to. So I did have to be careful, but I was careful with an awareness that I would rather go back than go to, than die. Like, that. What are the choices? So that had nothing to do with nothing. We're going to move the way we got to move no matter what, and you just got to deal with what you deal with and try to move correctly, and that's what we did. But what I reaped was the benefit of so much love and respect. And I mean, insurmountable, significant amounts of it from people from all walks of life. And because of that, I just had, it was, good ideas and bad ideas. I think it was a bad idea. Some dumb shit I could have experienced would have been a bad idea for me and others. So
how'd you end up in Vegas, though? Did you parole to Sacramento originally?
So when I got out of prison, because of the lifer thing, because of the restraining orders, I had 9 restraining orders on me and parole. They paroled me to the second next county over, which is the rule. So I ended up in Oakland. Significant amount of love and respect out there, and a lot of people who made sure that I was situated in a way that they liked. And I had a positive experience, made great relationships, got a lot of work done. And it's just a lot of people out there that I got a significant amount of love for. So I was there, but I own my home in Vegas that was purchased prior to me getting out. And so I had to do halfway house, gang task force monitor, ankle monitor, approved by the governor, transfer parole to Nevada. Nevada accepted me. And that was, I think, I saw you last time 2 months after I had been accepted to go to Nevada.
Okay.
So I had just got to my house at the point where we were doing our interview, even though I'd been home since 2018. So it took October of 2019 is when I finally got to go to Vegas.
Was there any politics associated with you still being up in Oakland, given your history of being up there? Like, I don't know if there's anyone who's would have still been upset with you about prior circumstances.
I think it's intelligent to assume that that's true, but it's also necessary to be aware of how respectful what you can achieve by exhibiting the right amount of respect to the right people and communicating openly and honestly. So I've always been open about my perspective on my circumstances. People are aware of what really did and did not happen on the street underworld level. So it was people who knew better than I did in terms of what I was and was not responsible for. And what are your choices? If you tell on them, you're a rat bastard. You hold your mud and keep your mouth closed, people speculate and make up stories. You got to choose which one of those you want to have, and it is what it is. Most people would, try to defend themselves and end up saying too much, and now you're saying things that should have stayed where they were. And so I've always chose not to be the person that do that and let people speculate. But those who mattered knew what time it was. So I was received well in Oakland. I had a funny story happen to me that ended up allowing me to have significant influence in Oakland. So I'm in a transitional house. I get it set up so I can work as a rap artist. And so they have to approve me to go out for 8 hours. It's basically a jail. The transitional house is a jail. And we can go to work or you can go to school. So I'm self-employed. So I'm getting out 8 hours a day, and I go shoot the music video for California Dreamin'. That ends up on the news. We run up 2 million views on it. And now all of a sudden people in authority at the transitional house want to know how I was able to go do that. And so they start an investigation. I'm unaware that that's going on. I went out on a weekend pass or something. I come back and they end up in a conference room grilling me about who gave me permission specifically to go shoot that video. Even though they knew that I was approved to go, but they didn't know who approved me. And so I told them it wasn't my responsibility to identify who did what in their system, that if they knew I had approval, that was the extent of my participation in the experience. And so they threatened to send me back to prison with a life sentence if I didn't tell them who let me go. And I told them I sat there for 26 years because I was unwilling to say who did what.
Right.
And it don't make sense for me to come home and after that and say who did what, so you can send me back. A lady in there, beautiful black woman, one of them aunties, she stopped it and was like, this is gone far enough, blah, 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 excuse me from the room. I go back to my room like not knowing what the was going on. They end up leaving me alone. They let that go. Turns out the woman who interrupted that was Mr. Fab's aunt.
Wow.
So imagine being a piece of shit that would have started telling on whoever or giving people up, right? And Mr. Fab's aunt is in the room while you're doing that, right? So just the benefits of making good decisions. So that gets back to people. And then the person that they were trying to crack was actually the homie Yogi Calhoun's cousin. Yogi Calhoun's cousin was the one who gave me permission to go. And, you know, he was a younger brother, and evidently people were, they wanted to get rid of him. He had swag, you know what I mean?
And was he giving you permission to go shoot this video in a situation where other people wouldn't have? But
I don't think so.
You had a little bit of a connection with him?
I think it was internal politics, and they had a problem with him and was using that as a way to try and get rid of that brother. That's what they was trying to do. And I don't know who he related to or nothing, but I just knew it wasn't my job to solve their problem. So what happens is the smoke clears, he survives that, and he pulls me out, and he told me that was some real shit. He respected it, and he said his cousin wanted to talk to me. I walked outside. I get in the bench, close the door, and it was Yogi Calhoun, and he was like, I really appreciate what you did for my cousin. You know, he showed me a lot of love, and because of that, East Oakland was a very welcoming place for me to go to. So that's how that happened. That's how I met Yogi Calhoun. That's how I met Mr. Fab's aunt, who let me go for my first weekend pass and hang out with my family after I got out of prison. And these are very, very influential people in East Oakland, and for that reason, I was chilling.
That's dope. Why'd you decide to make the move to Vegas, though? Because I'm sure it's more laid back, chill, but also I feel like your star power is probably like more powerful in Northern California.
Yeah, it is. The issue was just that was where my home. I didn't know I was getting out when we bought that house. So we didn't buy that house. You know, it wasn't the first home that we had purchased, and so that was just where we had our residence. You know what I mean? And so when you say go home, for me at the time, going home was to go to Vegas, to my house, you know.
Ben, so you were able to buy a house in Vegas with money that you saved from streaming and whatnot while you were locked up for all those 25 years?
Well, I was also around when you know, a CD was $10.
Right.
And I'm independent and I'm signed to Bayside Distribution, so I sell 100,000 units, I get $7 a pop.
I've just had so many people tell me that when you get locked up, especially for a long ass time, you almost always lose all of your money.
I didn't have that experience. I had a different kind of experience because of the people that are currently in my life.
Right.
People, I realized they say your net worth is your network. Your network is your net worth.
Right.
So I know people, knew people, and still know people who have more money than me, who find it unreasonable for me to be broke, who dislike that concept, who wouldn't allow it. And so I was in a circumstance where you got people like Brian Shafton. I had a distribution deal with his company while I was still there releasing music for myself and others. So I had built my business by 2005, Blockstar, as a real company, and was doing my thing. And my partner at the time was aggressive in terms of making solid decisions financially. So it wasn't just me. It was a combination of 20 years of work in that environment, not knowing if I was coming home or not. So I'm just trying to, have a good life, whether it was there or here.
Right.
And so that behavior ended up resulting in me being able to come home to a beautiful circumstance, as a result of my decisions and my partner's decision in life. We went crazy. We did our thing.
Hell yeah, that's dope.
Yeah.
Your partner? Is that
Yeah, and my ex-wife.
okay?
Yeah.
So that didn't work out at a certain point, or
It did not.
after you got out?
Yeah.
You were together the whole time they were locked up?
Nah, not all of it, but a significant amount of it.
Okay. I'm assuming you thought that it was going to work out long term when you got out of prison?
I did.
What were, if you don't mind me asking, what were the stresses that led to that ending?
I think me having to go to Oakland, I think the pandemic, and I think unrealistic perceptions of what life would be like outside of that environment for somebody. I had an idealistic view of life that I was unaware I had. And so when you're in that environment, I'm a 17-year-old kid. I'm 44 when I come home, right? Almost all of my information in regard to what I thought life was from theoretical shit. It's from what people told me and what I observed on TV, what I read, what I listened to, and I'm forming a perception of life. Like, I'm literally one of the people in Plato's cave looking at that wall with the fire burning, trying to decide what I think that shadow is. You know what I mean?
Right.
Trying to define something that I wasn't immersed in, I wasn't really living.
Right.
And so I think that getting out and coming to terms, and I'm not the only one, by the way. I've had these conversations with my big homie. He had a lot to do with some of the decisions I made in terms of how he perceived his arrival from prison coming home. My OG, Big Dooney, did 50 years. And he didn't do the 50. He did half of that, I think. What you do? 30? 31? So he did 31 and was the one who started telling me to go to school and change my life while I was in that environment. But there's relationship issues that we aren't aware that we're going to have. And then those of us who were lifers, you build a life for yourself that was meant for that experience. I didn't build a life for myself that was meant for this experience because I didn't know I was going to have this experience. And maybe that's what she might have been doing, but you get out and you see that this isn't what I thought it was going to be, or the way I would like it to be, or how I would like interpersonal dynamics to work, family member integration, things like that. And so these things become cultural conflicts.
Is there a guilt associated with that, just knowing that you kind of had this person on the hook for so long, and then at a certain point you realized it wasn't good for you?
No, it was compassion. I think it was compassion. I had compassion. And I think that there is an absence. I think it's very difficult for someone to have compassion for a lifer, somebody who did 2020. They can't comprehend what we experienced.
Right.
How can I communicate to somebody? I did 6 months less than Nelson Mandela, bro.
Wow.
6 months less than Nelson Mandela. He did 2 years more than Nelson Mandela. How do I tell somebody what that felt like and how to have empathy for me or be compassionate toward me? How do I inform them of triggers that I have or defects that I'm working with and trauma? How do I communicate that to someone who has no ability to be able to understand it? They can hear you, but they can't really comprehend. This is why I'm reacting to these particular things, or I'll say, if you rescued a dog, people would have more empathy for that dog if it bit somebody than they would for a human being who got rescued and was exhibiting behaviors they didn't like. If the dog is barking, if the dog bit the kid, they would have 50 million. Oh, he just got out of the pound, please.
Right.
You know, but they don't do that for a human being because, you know, we humans, we expect a lot from each other. And so I had a lot of unrealistic expectations. I think we just ended up being, we were not the people that we perceived each other to be. And the most loving thing you could do in that circumstance is to allow somebody to be themselves and to be yourself. I wanted to have children. I wanted to be truly free and make decisions for myself and my life. I did not want to be treated like a product, you know, a brand. I wanted to be loved as a man, you know what I mean?
Who was trying to treat you like a product and a brand? Because it's like there is you as a human being,
right,
and then there is the fact that you, just by virtue of existing, are a business that could be monetized in a host of different ways. And, you know, you're fresh out of prison. It's like you're not necessarily in the position to know what the best way to make use of the brand is. That must have been very tricky.
I think it's less tricky when you got a Brian Shafton in your life, when you got I have people in my life who are very much suited for understanding what those brands were. And so you say what I need in my personal life versus what I need in my professional life aren't the same. In my personal life, I needed to be treated as a supportive partner and human being, as somebody who was having their own experience, not just a united experience, but also an individual experience that required understanding and how my operations manual and how to understand to do the same thing for someone else. So, you know, my lawyer has told me to be careful about those subjects through the documents that we signed out of respect for each other's privacy. So what I would say is that I'm very grateful and appreciative, and the life that I built for myself in that environment was the best that I've ever seen anybody be able to execute, and I did that with somebody who's the savage beast in the realm, in that particular realm. And the same thing that made us strong from that perspective made us weak in society. And that's my opinion of it. And I love her, and I wish her great success. She's my family member, you know, and that's that. And I'm doing me.
100%, yeah.
Free as
freedom. It's got to feel good, huh?
two beautiful baby boys, 19-month-old and one about to be 2 months old, who were never supposed to exist on this planet at all.
Not supposed to exist because you were supposed to be locked up for the rest of your life?
Forever.
Wow.
Or incapable of producing them. And
oh, you didn't think you were capable of having kids?
I did not think that. I didn't know.
That was the goal, is having us in prison for all that time.
Oh, really? What, so...
Can't reproduce.
It's one of the reasons.
But were you in a hurry to make children as soon as you got out, or did you just happen to... It just happened?
It was a dream of mine. You know, I wanted to be a father, man. I see, you know, you've been able to do that. You know, I wanted to be a father.
Yeah, it's the best feeling ever.
It is, truly. It truly is the best thing that ever happened in my life.
I went on a hike with my kid before I came here for an hour. She cried the whole fucking time. She was furious. It was amazing, though. It was great.
Right.
You know, it's just like, so cool. I'm explaining the concept to her of, I know your legs hurt. It's okay.
Right.
This is what it is. It's like your legs are getting stronger. Doesn't make any sense to her, but it just feels so good to be a part of that development of this little human being.
Yes. Yeah, that's what I'm on right now, and I got so much love in my life and support, and I'm really proud of what I've been able to deliberately create for myself as a person who is no longer incarcerated or on parole, being free as is what I call it.
So does your soul want you to relax, or does it want you to be on the road, hustling, doing everything you can to make fans and connect with the people and make every last dollar? Like, what does your heart tell you that you should be doing with your time?
Yeah, as a father, the predominant thing I want to do is be with my babies. You know, I want to be with my babies.
Right.
And so you also got to be able to, you got to have your bag where you want it to be able to decide that that's what you want to do, or be able to, you know, I'm fortunate that I could stay home and make good money and not have to run around if I don't want to. Almost superior. I lost $30-something thousand last year running around. You know, it's damn near like paying myself when I stayed at my house this year, you know what I mean? And only go out for the bigger things. And I think strategically, in keeping with Travis O'Gwen's strategy for me in my personal life, and I happen to think he's the Bill Belichick of this independent music shit. You know what I mean? There is no one with more championship rings, and if there are, they're part of his own movement. I think it pisses him off. Brian Shafton got more plaques than him. He can't catch him because they still work together.
But you say losing $30,000 was because it costs so much to
Run
go on
around.
tour and go do these different dates and stuff that it's like even if you're getting paid a decent amount, it might cost you more to get out there?
Yeah, shit's expensive. You know, you got all this different shit. Uncle Sam, you got all this different shit. And there's ways to do it correctly, but I didn't necessarily do it correctly. You know what I mean? Because I ran plays that I wanted to run instead of running plays that my coach was calling. And so what I learned was to listen to your coach and run the plays that the coach calls the way he calls them. And as a result of that, I've had a superior experience. 2024 has been an awesome year for me. Some amazing opportunities that Tech has set up. So yeah, if I had my choice, I would stay at home and I'll dip out when I'm about to go hunt and drag that back, a gazelle back, feed my cubs and watch me some football and go out when I need to grab me another gazelle. That's what I'm on right now, for real. And so, you know, I'm focused on the documentary. I'm focused on my book and, you know, an anthology type of project that can wrap up my career. And I'm not starting a rap career. I've been here for right after Cube, in that middle space, but while Pac was still Digital Underground Pac, becoming Thug Life Pac, and then before Snoop, and before there was even a Death Row, there was an X-rated and a Psychoactive, and that's my fucking spot. I want my spot. Everybody gonna respect my spot. I'm not playing. I'm not one of these little new niggas. I don't want to be categorized with them. I'm one of the dopest motherfuckers from my era. Still this dope on songs with Conway, Joyner Lucas, and Tech N9ne. Read the comments, you know what I mean? Acting the fuck up. People love what I'm doing, and if I'm pretending to be some new dude, it's just you just a new dope dude. But if it's put me where I go, then you say, damn, how many motherfuckers still this dope? How many of them are they? How many people still this hungry? 40? Snoop? Who? How many? Make the list. And then there I go. I like that a lot.
Are you satisfied with the reception that you've gotten from people, in particular, like, you know, other rappers and shit, like in terms of the amount of respect that you might feel like you were due just by, you know, being a real one and going and sitting down and doing your time and being somebody that was so early in terms of a lot of shit? Yeah,
definitely. I had a few awesome conversations with people who can, for themselves, say what they want to say. But like recently, I did the song with Rakim on the God's Network project that he did, his first project in like 15 years.
Wow.
And so, you know, I do this verse on the Rakim album with Method Man. And like I had to come right after Method Man. That ain't easy work, you know what I mean, as a rapper, as an MC. And so I cooked it. I did my thing, and Rakim posted that on his profile, and that was like one of the biggest things. That's like Michael Jordan saying he liked the way you play shooting guard. You know what I mean? Like, that's a big deal. So it don't get bigger than that for me as a rapper, for outside of like what I'm doing with Tech, and for Rakim to say X-Rated takes you on a lyrical journey, blah blah blah. You know, that's MVP type shit for me. That's all-star. That's an all-star game. I got voted into an all-star game by somebody who cannot be denied.
But how integrated into the Strange Music family are you at this point? Like, how much of your business are they handling versus you still kind of behaving as if you're an independent artist? Are you like fully looped in with them, going on every tour, or like how's that look?
I am looped in with them in terms of like production, execution. We're responsible. My team is still responsible for the great majority of the music we make. I think I only got 3 tracks from producers that anybody from Strange Music has ever worked with before on this album that's dropping Friday. I'm proud of that. You know, I did my sound my way. I went home to South Sacramento and pulled South Sacramento. I pulled West Coast. My music is West Coast traditional West Coast hip hop. That's what I do, in the vein of what Cube established for us and what Snoop was able to do for us and what the game came and carried that torch for us. And then here come Kendrick to carry that torch for us. That's my DNA, and I fit in my spot in that DNA, and they all know it, by the way, all of them. And so I like for my music to represent that, because I think that that's the dopest hip hop in the history of the earth. I think nothing ever fucked with that. I respect what everybody else has done. I love, like, follow the leader. Come on. So I could make a list of what I think is the dopest shit ever. But if we talking about West Coast shit, like Cube, Snoop, you know, Pac's Run, Game, Kendrick, this is what I sonically, that's where E40, I sonically exist in that family, and I want my music to move deeper that way. I want to go more home with my shit now, especially being off Parole.
Is Horrorcore dead?
Horrorcore?
Yeah.
I don't think it's dead. I think social media has made it very difficult for Horrorcore to have its just due in the game. It's like very difficult.
The hip hop community has forgotten how to consume those types of lyrics and stuff. Like in the 90s, it was okay. Like, I'm not sure like how many of the listeners necessarily thought that these were all real stories versus like just more extreme versions. I'm somebody that grew up listening to a lot of death metal and shit. So from my perspective, you know, go read a Cannibal Corpse lyric sheet, and it's probably gonna be worse than anything that you guys ever did. Well, actually, honestly, it's probably like very close, neck and neck. But like, you know, for me, it's easy to understand. Like, this is a death metal group. They are talking about some horrible shit, but it's no different than a horror movie. Right. Where a horror movie, it's easy for people to understand that the director of the horror movie doesn't want to, you know, kill innocent people, but you know, a band could sing about that kind of thing. And for me, it's like, even just hearing the way that people talk, I was watching some like YouTube essay type stuff about you and Brother Lynch Hung and all these guys, and it's like people are very into like moralizing and passing judgment as if like, how could you ever rap about this sort of thing? And I'm like, bro, it's an entire genre that was based around the idea of doing the most extreme shit. And I mean, there's like the gangster rap version of that as well. Like, you know, I go listen to, I grew up listening to Eazy-E talk about some horrible shit that I know that he didn't actually partake in. And it's like, you know, hip hop kind of seems like it outgrew that to a certain extent. People want everything to be real and less fantasy. I don't know. It's strange. I
don't know. If I'm a black guy and I put on a hockey mask and I take a chainsaw and I start that chainsaw and I chop a body and blood splatters on me, and I look up at the camera and I'm standing next to Big Sean.
You're literally describing the most recent Eminem video, yeah.
And the number one album in the world.
Right, and people seem able to accept that Eminem is playing a character when he does that, and he's not a serial killer.
And that's as close to being informed by horrorcore as it's ever gonna get.
Right.
And they all just stomached it and made it the number one album in the country. But myself and Brother Lynch Hung, who Eminem unequivocally was paying attention to, do the same thing, we don't have the same outcome, and we end up having a conversation about why our genre that we pioneered cannot work, even though it was just leading to what resulted in the number one album in the world. So that's an interesting dynamic.
That's true.
Interesting. I think that nobody's going to arrest Rob Zombie, right?
Exactly,
and say his characters are real. The hills really have eyes.
He caught a lot of bodies over the years in his albums as well, yeah.
Yeah, and I think it's awesome. And I think that it informs us of the inherent responsibility that comes with being an MC in hip hop. I think it's both hypocrisy and a statement about why we're special. So I think that people expect hip hop to be real. They really do. And I think that there is an onus to try and hug that reality as close as you possibly can, you know? Did Ice Cube and Eazy-E and Dr. Dre get pulled over by the cops, thrown on the car and beat on with batons? Or was the police a song to describe literally what was occurring in their environment, even if it didn't happen to them, right? Although people say that story really happened.
But there's a lot of Pac songs where he's rapping about having kids. He didn't have any kids.
Yeah,
but he's
I
an
got
artist.
songs where I rapped about having kids and I didn't have kids. I have a song called Hellraiser, where I start a verse talking about having to go hustle because my daughter is going to be 2 years old, and I have to make sure I'm providing for my daughter. And the reason I wrote that song is because I have a homie named Wicked, and the homie Wicked was in a court tank with me talking about his experience, and he was talking about his daughter and why it was so important for him to get through his experience successfully because he wanted to take care of his daughter. So I wrote that song for Wicked, and then I came and rapped it to him, and he cried. And I recorded it, and it's called Hellraiser now on the album called Nefarious, and it's one of my biggest songs I ever made. And I didn't have a daughter. I don't have a daughter.
But even at the time, you know, you rapping about extreme shit that you did or didn't do kind of bit you in the ass. Since obviously, like now it's very clear to me, like, oh, the mainstream media took your lyrics and misrepresented them and claimed that you had songs that were titled things that you didn't have and shit like that. So it's like, you know, that kind of thing, I guess, is not all that new, that people are going to take rap lyrics extremely literally, whereas they don't necessarily hold every other genre to the same standard.
Or every other ethnicity, because we have to talk about systemic racism in the United States of America for us to have an honest conversation about why lyrics are being used against people. Because nobody went and got Ill Bill and said he wrote a song about killing people or whoever. Nobody went and got Eminem. You know what I mean? They're going to be protesting. Nobody protested nothing. He just rapped that. Then people, oh my God, they're going to protest Slim. And nobody protested nothing. They were in 2000, right? They were he ruffled some feathers. I thought it was hilarious, by the way, and I think he's dope as fuck. And so, but the truth is, they ain't nobody going to arrest none of them. You know, and who's been arrested that wasn't African American in it, or a melanated person in the history of hip hop? And I was first. I was the first one they ever did that to. So I'm paying attention, and they look like me. They look like Young Thug. They look like, right? They don't look like Eminem. Right. They gonna go get Eminem.
But I feel like you weren't speaking about this when you first got out, but in recent times you've become a little bit more of an outspoken advocate for how unfair it could be to prosecute people based on lyrics and using lyrics in court. I seen a clip of you on TMZ talking about it.
Yeah.
What kind of sparked that? Because you made it clear that like the way that you were prosecuted would not fly in modern times.
Oh yeah, that's a deep rabbit hole. So we'll dive in there. I want to touch on something about the horrorcore thing.
Oh yeah, sure.
The reason I think horrorcore can't be successful currently is because music lives primarily online, and there are no community guidelines on earth that allow for Brother Lynch Hung to promote himself.
Right.
That's what I think the problem is. He's going to be shadow banned everywhere. If we post one song, we post 4 bars of a Brother Lynch Hung song, we shadow banned for 2-3 weeks, right? So I think that got a lot to do with it. And you got to be bigger than the machine, or as big as the machine, like a Slim Shady, to be able to get away with that, because there's so much considered to be entertainment, which I think makes us stronger as a community. I don't subscribe to the Eminem is Elvis thing. I think he's dope as fucking rapped his way to the power and influence that he has. I'm a huge Eminem advocate. But Brother Lynch Hung is somebody who has difficulty in the modern era because the system, the machine is not designed for Brother Lynch Hung to be successful. He was literally had to have underground routes and in person, in your face, in stores where you made the choice. I want to see this. But now the algorithms deciding what you see, and they don't want you to see that. So I think that's a problem for him. But to answer your question, the experience that I had, we talk about this. The lyrics being used against you in the state of California, boom, that's illegal. California's felony murder rule has been rewritten, completely reconstructed, and you are no longer allowed to 5 people, 1 victim, 1 gun, 1 bullet, and 5 people got murdered. That's illegal in the state of California. Juvenile is no longer able to be automatically remanded over to adult court. That's illegal in California, which is the reason why you have to sit here and interview a kid who looks you in your face and say, I shot Pop Smoke. Right? because it's illegal to give a juvenile a life sentence. They can do up to the age of 25, and they're back out.
Right.
And they're ironically calling themselves Blockstar.
Yeah, I was going to point that out earlier.
So that's illegal now. Throwing juveniles into adult facilities is illegal now. So if you just go back and say X-rated, first person ever had his lyrics used against him, that's illegal in the state of California. X-rated was facing the death penalty, remanded to adult court, and given a life sentence. That's illegal in the state of California.
Because you were how old?
17.
Jeez, okay.
So what we're talking about is that 95, 99 to 100% range of what I was put in prison for is currently illegal in the state of California. And so it's a lot you can't talk about, but people like Gavin Newsom, to his credit, and his staff they put up a fight and said, hey, we don't believe this is right. A lot of people lobbied for these things. Meek Mill did his job out on the East. We did our job out here on the West, and we got those things accomplished for other people not to have the experiences that we had. And so, if you go shoot a dude and you go rap about that tomorrow and it's definitively provable that that's what you did, then that's some dumbass shit you just did. But for me, as a kid that they said wrote a song about a murder he committed, even though the song was written before and recorded months before this crime ever occurred. The song is called Still Shooting, but they titled it The Murder.
Right, and when I'm watching the news reporters talk about that, when I'm watching old footage of that, it's like they wrote the narrative.
They did.
And there was no internet for people to be able to raise hell and be like, look at how this is bullshit. Because nowadays, if that shit was put out there on CNN, there would instantaneously be, viral Twitter threads and Instagram posts breaking down how, look how the mainstream media is lying to you.
Right.
And there was no venue for that to happen at the time.
I got f***ed over. And largely, this is something that I've always felt something about. The hip-hop community at the time, the hip-hop journalism, which now, if that happened to me and y'all knew it, you would go crazy. You would have a fit if that happened next week.
Right.
You'd have a fit. Y'all would be pushing the line. A lot of people would be pushing the line.
And it would be so easy to get the news out there because
What
people
really
would be so entranced by like, holy shit, like this is so blatant how they're lying.
Editing my lyrics to make it say was something I didn't say. Instead of hip-hop journalism writing the real story, they went and picked up the story from the AP and copy and pasted it.
Okay.
So now I got the Source magazine accusing me of something that the Sacramento Bee wrote. I got Vibe magazine repeating something that the Sacramento Bee wrote, with no respect for the politics that were involved or the fact that I was the first viral news story related to hip hop, arguably on the West Coast at all. I was the first one to ever have lyrics used against them in hip hop at all. But that moment, my city, the biggest thing that had happened in Sacramento was Dorothea Puente having the bodies in her yard, right? And they sensationalized that story. Sacramento's grandma who was a serial killer. I'm the next thing after her that got sold almost as that version of it moving into entertainment more than news that we're used to seeing now.
Right.
Where the news is more of an entertainment thing. Even our presidency done turned into some entertainment shit more so than strict professional journalism, strict professional politics. It's mudslinging, it's entertainment, it's likes and clicks at the highest levels. At the time, it was so early that was subtle enough for them to get away with that, to have sensationalized the story about a juvenile who they called a gang leader who had organized and when it executed this and had rapped about it. They sold that story, and unfortunately my own community regurgitated instead of doing journalism themselves, which I know my community would have done that for me today, but at that particular time, that didn't occur.
There was only a handful of journalistic voices within hip hop at that time. It would have basically been like, I don't know, The Source and like maybe a couple of other sort of regional publications. There wasn't that much real journalism happening.
Yeah, I agree. This is damn near before Vibe. This is before XXL. The magazines didn't get, The Source was still the hip hop Bible. So the one place that was my home field advantage copy and pasted a story from the AP that was literally written by people who were exploiting the story of a 17-year-old child for, likes and clicks, their version of likes and clicks at the time.
It's crazy because the intersection of art and real deal violence and gang shit has just become more and more magnified within the culture. Like, there's just so much information. If you want to find out about any different gang war that's ever happened in any part of America, you can pretty much throw those names of those gangs in YouTube and find a 30-minute documentary that breaks down who got killed that started this war and where it's at today, and here's who's been killed over the past 10 years, etc. And it feels like, you being willing to like really talk about some real shit mixed in with a bunch of fantasy in your lyrics and stuff, like that was very ahead of its time as well. How do you look at that now, and do you still pay attention to the documentation of like what's going on in the streets and the intersection of music?
Yeah, I think being on the ground, moving around on the ground makes it to where you got to be aware. You don't want to pull up in the city and associate with somebody who got something going on that you may not be aware of. You want to know what's going on and who's doing what with who, what are the historical issues, and make a deliberate decision on, I'm in town, I'm with these people, I'm in town, I'm with these people, or I'm showing love to everybody. I'm doing me, but show some love. No matter what, you got to be aware where you are, who's who, and what's what. But I think it's necessary for me as a artist from my generation, from my class, and what I mean to my neighborhood, for me to be speaking toward these subjects in a respectful way, in a way that's trying to heal up some shit. Like, I came home from prison, and the people we were accused of attempting to attack, our rivals, just had a barbecue out on 24th Street with the homies, everybody together. One of they shot callers, they biggest homies, on the phone with me, chopping it up. I put him on the phone with Tech N9ne, my big homie here. Like, we have unity on the South Side and are trying to continue to heal wounds between the Keyways and the Damos, the Bloods and the Crips, between everybody. We on our side of town, that's first. You got to start where you are. So I'm more concerned about making sure that mine are doing what they're supposed to do, so we can avoid some of the things that have weakened the culture and strengthen us, and make sure that our children are safe out there and able to have a better experience than we did when we were that age. And that's the goal right now. So we got some supreme unity amongst those of us from my neighborhood right now, and getting off parole had a lot to do with that. Being able to even talk about it, or not be thrown back in prison for life for associating with known gang members, even though these are the dopest men that we got walking around attempting to create peace. And so, like, I could have came home, y'all hanging out with these dudes, it was like, man, this is beautiful.
Right.
I thought it was beautiful. I still think it's beautiful, and I'm an advocate for it, and I'm gonna do anything I can to strengthen it. So from that perspective, it is necessary for me to be aware of the politics. So I play my, you gotta make your moves correctly with an awareness of what dynamics can and cannot be mixed. Some substances are caustic. You can't pour that shit together.
Right. Yeah, you'd really be playing the game with a blindfold over your eyes if you weren't doing your homework to figure out because like even in Sacramento, there's a lot of neighboring cities where it's like their politics basically overlap with Sacramento, and if you're cool with this person, you cannot be cool with this person. And we read about this all the time, seeing like the birth of like Stockton having this thriving music scene, and realizing that like there's jurisdictions about who can hang out with each other in all of the neighboring cities when it comes to the music shit. And that's been kind of crazy to watch how that's developed.
Yeah, man, them our baby boys. Stockton to Sacramento is like a little brother. I grew up my whole life and I saw Sacramento, Stockton, Modesto on my TV screen. You know what I mean? I watched Fox 40. It say Sacramento, Stockton, Modesto. So that's always been home to us. And then we have alliances with Northside and Fofos, townhomes. Them is as much, they damn near garden block to us. Them the homies. And so in internal conflicts and stuff like that, or inside of prisons, institutions and things like that, that's our business too. But on the street, that's their business, you know what I mean? So a lot of that, ironically, EBK is something that we came up with. I got Everybody Killers on Psychoactive. First time anybody in the history of hip hop heard somebody say EBK was on Psychoactive on my album.
That's interesting, because there's a lot of different cities who have some people that claim to be EBK before the Stockton thing.
Yeah, none of them came before Psychoactive.
Right.
Yeah, so I want my spot. Ice Cube, X-Rated, Snoop Dogg, Tupac, all of us, right there in that cluster, 40, Master P. I want my spot. And then we could see that they got EBK from me.
Right. 100%.
Straight up. My shit.
Because you had an interview on Vlad while you were still locked up, like 6 years ago or so, like a couple years before you got released.
Yeah.
Where you had a quote where you said that gangs are parasitic organizations.
I did organisms.
Organisms, actually. Yeah, you're right. And there was another clip on Vlad where shit, what's his name?
Big Trey Deee.
Big Trey Deee. Trey Deee was talking about it, and he was kind of like, you know, painting the picture of like, think about X-Rated's life. Like, he got caught up in this shit when he was a juvenile, and then basically, like, he said that like all the people that you were on the case with ended up not being solid with you, and that, you know, you, through being locked up and like realizing that a lot of these people that you thought you maybe had a brotherhood with didn't do what they were supposed to do.
Yeah, they didn't send me packages.
He's basically saying, like, you know, think about it from X-Rated's perspective. Like, he has a certain perspective on the
Look
gang
at my
thing.
big ugly face. You didn't see his face? I love Trey Deee.
Was he exaggerating a
Listen
little
to
bit
me.
there?
I would never say that Trey Deee was exaggerating.
Okay.
I love Trey Deee. I love them niggas. The East Side is the homies.
Right.
Crooked Eye, King Crook, my dog.
Shout
That's
out
my
Crooked
partner.
Eye.
Snoop Dogg, the homie. I love me some Corrupt. Daz is the one who brought Psychoactive and said, this is what we need to do. That was Daz that took that into Death Row, right? My DNA is all over the place. So, with that said, I think from a perspective of gangsta and what's not gangsta is, number one, speaking on another man's situation is a violation of certain codes and ethics that we claim to stand by. It's a violation to speak on me, because although I love Trey Deee for his contribution in hip hop and his representation of Crip, which was flawless and continues to be flawless to this day, we don't know each other.
Okay.
We've never met. We've never spoke. We never walked the yard together. We've never. So I respect his statement that he never heard of me being a victim. I respect his statement of, you know, his perspective on my experience from a standard place. But when we start speculating, then nobody had to send me no package, bro. I Psychoactive out. I'm signing Priority Records when I went to jail and before there was a Death Row. So by the time you get to me being on a prison yard in 1996, I got Psychoactive and Exorcist out, and tapes and CDs sell for $10 to $7 out. We getting $10 to $7 a pop independently with Black Market Records. So they know I sent people packages. I got the homies visits. I sent my woman money, right? So it's a mistake when people start talking about stuff like that. So I do agree with the juvenile thing, and I think, you know, he was just trying to make sure that people didn't lose perspective for me having been a child, and that was him expressing compassion for me, and I like that. But I think sometimes in our effort to establish our own gangster, that sometimes we have a habit of minimizing somebody else's, and I'm not willing to allow that to occur to me.
Okay.
I've had enough of that, bro. I'm on parole. I've had enough. Ain't nobody minimizing me so they can look like a gangster or be a bigger nigga. I think that everybody already nice where they at. I respect where everybody at, and I'm not minimizing nobody else's gangster, and they not minimizing mine. Ain't nobody Highlander in me, eating me so they can get, I'm not being spinach for another nigga's G. I don't give a f who they are. I really feel that way. I hope I said that correctly. On the set, I really feel that way. Dead homies.
So what did you mean when you had that quote on the Vlad interview?
I meant that shit. I also, so this is what I mean, you want to talk about gangster shit, let's talk about some real life gangster shit.
Yeah, I'm interested in your perspective on it, because I see so many young people that are enamored with it, and then by the time dudes get to 40 or 50, a lot of times they have
let's talk about some
different
gangster shit. First of all, while we still on the subject of the OG homie Trey Deee, while we still on that subject, let's talk about lifers and people with indeterminate sentences. When you are a lifer, I told you, you on parole, you on life or parole. because I was on lifer parole, the difference between myself and somebody who was not a lifer, which is inclusive of Trey Deee, you go to board. You got to go to board to go home, and that board can deny you 3 years, 5 years, or 7 years. The same board that denied Charles Manson 15 years and let him die in his bed is the same board I had to go through to get out. So at the time, if you Googled me, all that came up was gangster shit, because that's what I had done my whole life. That's what my life was made up of, being a youngster trying to survive that experience. And so with that awareness from my phenomenal attorney, Charles Carbone, who is the greatest prisoners' rights attorney on the face of the planet, if you need one, call Charles Carbone.
That's good.
Charles Carbone says, man, it's a lot of negativity when we Google you. There's a lot of history. This is a tactical weakness that we have. This is a weakness, a strategic weakness. And so I say, all right, cool. We got the Vlad opportunity. If you think about it, I do this Vlad interview aware that I'm going to board, and I make sure I wasn't even talking to Vlad. That interview was executed on behalf of myself with an awareness that the board, and when they Googled me, right, after those Vlad interviews dropped, when you Googled me, what you found was Vlad, X-rated Vlad, X-rated Vlad. I smothered my name online with a narrative that I created, as opposed to being vulnerable to a narrative that had been created about me from 1992 to 2016, 2017. That narrative had been, the train left the building. I was both, I was Bigfoot and the boogeyman. Right? All these stories about X-rated, but I ain't met these people. Even somebody as G'd out and reputable as a Trey Deee could fall susceptible to this. Talking about somebody who they never met before, because I became something larger than myself. The train left the building. We talked about it, the baby vampire. We talked about Shirley Temple being frozen. You know, I was X-rated with the gun to his head, 17-year-old kid, even though I'm a 40-something-year-old man with people talking about me that I ain't never met before. And I'm in a real-life circumstance. And I walk certain circumstances longer than some of the people with something to say. You understand? If you add up my time running around like a psychopathic maniac, and you add up the time they served, I literally did that longer than they did. I did that longer. I did more active, idiotic time than anybody. There is no one who came home who has more time than me, because they did 5, 6, 7, maybe they did 10 of that. I did longer than that in that environment, acting up. So these aren't people, these people are not authorities to speak on me. I very much dislike it. I dislike it a lot. I've disliked it for a long time. So anyway, as a lifer, you gotta go through the board. They can say no. We don't believe you. We don't like where you're coming from. We look on the internet, it doesn't represent what you're saying now. So a lot of that was me attempting to create sound bites and quotes, and give myself an opportunity to play chess when I go in this environment, to debunk some of this other bullshit that's been written about me from these, my own home team media, the hip hop media, and the Sacramento Bees and the LA Times and all these articles that have been written about me, and not even all of them that I even had quotes in speaking for myself. That was what you found under 10,000 searches, X-rated, 10,000 more results, 10,000 more results was a bunch of shit, because I didn't say nothing. You had a gang-related homicide. You talk about my homies didn't keep it solid. Every single one of my homeboys stays solid. Everybody.
Okay, so Trey Deee definitely got that wrong when he was
I don't know
interview.
that was his specific quote. Yeah, that ain't fair to put on Trey Deee.
Well, I think he did say that. Like,
I don't believe my interpretation of what he said wasn't that. I believe what he was saying was, you could get upset in that environment because people not sending you packages. That was my interpretation of what he said, which is true for some people. But it would be unrealistic to think that applies to the dude who dropped Psychoactive, who dropped Exorcist, who dropped Unforgiven, who dropped Vengeance Is Mine, who introduced T-Nutty Nut, who put out all these music and introduced the Looney Coleon. First time you ever heard Brother Lynch hung was on Psychoactive. If you drive 200 miles outside of Sacramento, 50 miles, first time they ever heard him. The assumption that that person was in prison hungry it's not. It's beneath his level of intelligence or anybody's level of intelligence.
Right.
And my homeboys ain't not one of the specific youngster that took a deal to tell on us. He's not a Garden Block member. He was a child. He was a traumatized child. And if anything, he should be given an apology and a conversation about how he ended up in a circumstance that was utterly devastating to his life. That's really what we got to talk about. That baby had to go through that. He was a 15-year-old child. 15, you know what I mean? So yeah, he took the little deal and he came and testified, and none of my homeboys said a word. My co-defendant that I sat next to was acquitted. I was convicted. My homeboy didn't do a day in prison. We had fractured. We went to trial together. My other two homeboys went to trial together. They were convicted before. We looked at each other and said, hey man, you know, we got to make sure that this circumstance happens the way it's supposed to happen. We watched what happened to our brothers, and we went to trial together. My co-defendant never did a day in prison. May 17th, 1996 was acquitted and went home. Came back to visit me with the forewoman of his jury. Sat right there and she cried and said, I wish I could have let you go too, right? She came to visit me with him after they acquitted him. So these are things that couldn't be talked about, right? And I'm only doing it now because I'm on parole. I don't give a and ain't nobody eating my gangster like Cheerios so they can feel better about their G. I'm not having that. So a gang is a parasitic organism. So a parasitic organism is defined as an organism that lives on or within another organism without regard for the survival of its host. That's a literal definition of a gang. It's on me. These twos and foes, this GBC on me is really on me. This ain't no game. This shit is on me for sure, right? And it drove all the decisions that I made because the train had left the building. It was ugly. It's ugly on the south side. This ain't no game. And so what I had to come to understand is that we have to defeat that parasitic organism, and we watching it happen. With YG walking down the street with Game and all the Pyros, right? It's beautiful.
Right.
That's them defeating the parasitic organism. That's the whole saying, man, you ain't gonna tell me what to do. You don't get to tell me what to do. Right? Because the parasite want me to smack that brother right there walking out that store. What he wearing? What hat is that? What shirt is that? What set is that? Where your grandma stay? We've made jokes out of it. Skits. Where your grandma stay? Where your mama live? Where your auntie from? We've made jokes and skits out of it. That's a real thing. I don't have to decide that. I don't have to believe everything I think. I don't have to believe everything I feel. I can investigate my own emotions. I can decide that I want to have discernment in regard to somebody else's life and be respectful to them. And I have the ability to demand that they do the same thing for me. And then straight up. And ain't no parasite about to drive my car. I'm not willing to be driven off of, I'm not existing from a place of hate. The same way you on that hike with your baby, and I'm chilling with my babies on the couch, chilling, taking them to strange music in this $20 million studio. Man, I wish that kind of joy for all of them. Because if they had that, would nobody be hurting nobody? Yeah, would nobody hurt nobody? So hurt people, I said in the song. Hurt people. And if that's true, then heal people. Heal people. And that's what you see. These brothers is healed persons or people in the process of healing, attempting to cause healing. But Kendrick Lamar attempting to cause healing. That's beautiful for YG to be wanting to cause healing. This is beautiful. This ain't no game. So it's up. We Bloods and Crips functioning on the South Side. We trying to put it together in a way where we put strength in our community. We inspired by what everybody else is doing and inspired by the fact that I'm not the only one. I'm not special. I was the only rapper, but my big homie here, and he was doing life. He had what was it? What they end up giving you life? They gave you the 50 and you did 31 out of the 50. So it's other ones, there's a founding father of Garden Block. This ain't a random dude. This is somebody on our Mount Rushmore. His co-defendant is literally the creator of my street, and we still trying to get him home right now. My Uncle Barry Woods, B-Dub, 24th Street Garden Block. So like, this mission we on, the men that are coming home even from on the other side, men like Vaughn, men like Severio strong men. Like, it's men on the other side coming home who also have healed and who would like healing. You got to be concerned about, is everybody on the same page? You know, Big Meek in the South Side, Miko Ure, who, if I didn't have him in my life, I wouldn't have had a career at all. Out there on the South Side trying to do something beautiful in the community with people who were trying to harm each other not long ago. And my homie Big Pook and the motorcycle club, Disintegrated, man, I think it's beautiful. So hurt people, heal people, heal people. People with discernment are careful with their tongue when they speak on other people. And that's what time it is, and that's what I'm gonna stand on.
So would you say that it's always going to be foolish to act like gangs are only one thing and that gangs are inherently evil? Because I feel like a gang is as simple as just there being a neighborhood and there being dudes who at some point have to join together to protect themselves. Is the problem just that the culture of gangbanging is to some extent toxic, and that needs to change as time goes by? Because like it's one thing to imagine LA, a lot of different gangs in LA getting along with each other. That's, you can conceive of that. The idea of everybody just saying like, no more gangs. I mean, that's impossible to imagine in LA.
I think it's unnecessary. I think that the origins of gangs, if we look at the young bloods that came back from Vietnam and the origins of the bloods, the real origins, not just the streets, but the origins of the bloods. If you look at the origins of the Crips as a response to the Black Panther Party, like it was created to do what it's doing right now. It wasn't created to do what it started doing. What it started doing was created by guns and dope being dropped in Los Angeles, California by government officials who were intending to disrupt, by officers who dressed up like Bloods and Crips and did drive-bys in order to cause bloodshed, to create division, because it's more financially lucrative in the United States of America for people, for poor people, because it's not fair. We talked about that before. I told you some of these groups I ran they're integrated. I can't create a group in prison and say that white boy can't come over here. If you coming and you serious, this is a safe place. Come do you, and that's that. You can deal with your homeboys, but come do you. If you have a circumstance where poor people are in this country monetized, they monetized our life. You born, right? I just had a baby. Spent a week, 2 weeks in the NICU. Cost us $250,000. $250,000. Thank God for insurance, right?
Yeah. Okay. Yeah.
$250,000. 2 weeks in the NICU. We monetized and by the way, I had to start tripping because he didn't need to be there. He didn't need to be there. This is a money play. I'm watching it happen and I'm saying, are you a doctor? Because you look like a lawyer. Actually, I have some paperwork I want to see. Like, all right, man, my baby up out of here. Oh, you got to deal with CPS. I got to deal with CPS to get my child out of here, right? We're monetized when we're born. They got us monetized when we're alive. You're gonna pay your taxes. You're gonna pay these doctors. You're gonna every way. You're gonna go to these liquor stores. You're gonna get these drugs. You're gonna do this. You're gonna do this. You're gonna do this. Then you die, and they monetize that too. You up and make a mistake before you die. We got a place to monetize you for that too. I got monetized for 26 some odd years. So that, number one, gangs didn't become destructive organizations as a result of their origin. Their origin was not to be destructive, but destruction was something that was imposed and implanted amongst it. And that's what spiraled us into being something that we were eating each other. And I think people are starting to wake up to that. And it's like, I don't wish harm on somebody's child because of what street he was born on. You know what I mean?
Right.
The street he ran with. That don't make sense to me. I can't find a place in my mind where that would be logical.
You can't think of anything more destructive than that in terms of like the overall health of a community.
Yeah, man. If we did it anywhere else, they would be calling that a crisis of some kind, right? If you see something like that happening in the Sudan, they say there's a crisis in the Sudan. But nobody says there's a crisis in South Sacramento. There's a crisis in South Central LA. Like there's a crisis of parasitic organisms driving the car. And I think what we're seeing is a lot of people deciding that ain't something they want to participate in no more. And I think it's beautiful. I did all that time. I ain't come home hateful. I ain't judge my own boys for making peace. I could have done that. People made arguments about decisions I made. I could have made an argument about that. We still got homies in there over beefing with them. I just did 26 years over beefing with them, and y'all having a barbecue.
Yeah,
Right.
I don't know how much attention you pay to this, but like in Chicago, there's been a few people pushing peace. You know, FYB J Main saying that he wants to, like, he's basically given up his grievances and he's trying to just be a bridge in between, the BDs and the GDs and everything like that. And then even somebody like Lil Durk's getting on board with that. And then you see the very natural reaction to that from a lot of people that he grew up around, which is basically like, you're a bitch because you're basically turning your back on your friends who were killed by the other side at a certain point, and by you pushing peace, you're basically spitting on the grave of your friends. You should be sliding on behalf of your friends. And it's just like, that you see it right there. Like, this is how this problem is going to never go away.
I could tell you something that's going to be disturbing, and I think should be given great consideration, especially for people who don't understand this reality. That is a legitimate argument.
Yes.
It's a legitimate argument.
I understand it, yeah.
Spit in the homies' faces. It's a legitimate argument. I cannot tell someone to say F their hood because I want them to change their life. I got to tell you, love your hood and change it for that reason. So I got to acknowledge their grievances in order to respectfully respond to why it matters, but why it's more important to make a decision geared toward positivity and love. I can't do that if I'm not willing to listen to their grievances and hear them out when they're trying to explain to me why they feel so harmed, why it's so hard. I just came home from some shit I didn't do. It's people who could want to smack me, but they also think that shouldn't happen. It's not appropriate because of where I was and where they were and what it'll cost, right? You have the argument that them dudes are prepared for that. We're prepared for that. And there's the argument that love is superior to that anyway, right? So we got to be aware of both things. I don't get to deny one thing in order to push the other. So I think it's highly possible and necessary to push positivity while having an understanding, because where this man might not be ready, right? They say, teach with mildness those not favorably disposed, for they may come out of the snare of Satan and into the light, right? I don't get to decide how fast somebody's prepared to be able to heal. I don't get to decide that, because the wound is deep. The wound is Willie Lynch deep. The wound is United States of America deep. The wound is slave ship deep. The wound is CIA freeway rig drugs dispersed throughout the country, COINTELPRO deep. The wound is deep. So for me to look at somebody and say, it's been 2 years and you ain't really you ain't ready. I'm like, well, you spent a long time in the darkness. It's reasonable to think it's gonna take a second to turn that water back pure. We pouring something in it to dilute that yellow muck and that orange ugly shit that's inside of that cup. We just got to keep pouring it in there. So I'm very understanding, because I was the little homie who would have thought that was some mark ass shit. You making peace. There's a version of me that would have judged everybody. You ate a rib over there. I would have judged it. I would have thought that was lame, because my spirit was in a place that was not healthy. I was not a healthy person. I was an intelligent person operating from a place of darkness, harm, and hurt, and hate. And so when I got through that, by my big homies and people that was reaching out to me to tell me something, I listened. It was somebody like a Deee that had to tell me, hey man, it's okay. It's okay. I had to hear it from somebody I knew could be a monster if he wanted to. But it was always a person pushing us in these directions, but was with all the bullshit at the same time, because that's what we do. This the block. And so from that perspective, I'm very patient with people, and I try to hear them out and to give them an alternative perspective. Here's another way to look at that. And so hurt people, these people are hurt. If we gonna do a ticky-tack, you took one of ours, we took one of yours, this can't ever stop, because the score we aware. I'm hyper aware of the score.
Because people have short memories, especially young people who are in their mid-20s. It's like if this gang war has been part of their life since they were, in their early teen years, as soon as they became aware of it, it's actually probably existed way before that. Mm-hmm. It's like they don't have the perspective that you have of having seen decades and decades of this shit playing out over and over and over. So, and it's also, it's a shame that usually the people who are going to be instigating pushing peace are going to be the people who have seen some level of success, who understand how, they've been given kind of the privilege of having a more mature viewpoint on it.
Shit, I got little homies pushing peace. On behalf of they babies, youngins, with the shit, gremlins. I got gremlins pushing peace right now, super motivated. We united, and we've inspired a significant chunk of our section. I say damn near 90-some-odd% of it, very much motivated, because, and this is why, if you take away the ugliness and the sense of belonging and family, and this is what it's predicated on, being with the shit. If you take that away, what you gonna replace it with? Mm-hmm. It gotta be. I can't ask you to let that go. Let go of your entire identity and just be John Smith. And going back to the South Side though. What am I doing? There has to be an alternative. So if it's hurt people, and we get them through the hurt, and to be a healed person, and we got to give them something to do that is in the lane of healing, so that their predominant participation, what they doing. When you go to sit still, you with your babies, you doing something positive, you moving. When you start moving around, we doing something positive, we doing something to move the purpose. Even if it's still adrenaline rushes involved in it, some of the places, my big homie pulling up in rival neighborhoods, getting out by himself because of respect. They respect him. There's a you got to be willing to do that. You got to be willing to get out and look at a young hyena in his face and say hello. Where your big homie at? You know what I mean? That come with a certain kind of so there's still a certain kind of G involved in doing the right thing. It's not an absence of gangster, you know what I mean? Kendrick Lamar walking around with people touching his shoulder like that's gonna heal him. There's a gangster inside of being willing to walk through that, being willing to walk through it, being okay. There's an amount of gangster being Martin Luther King on the balcony. You knew you potentially just told everybody he was gonna die a couple of days before. He was standing there.
Do you agree with the statement? I heard this quoted recently, is like, our modern day culture would never have allowed Malcolm Little to become Malcolm X. It's like our culture,
I don't think that's true.
So judgmental and full of hatred towards people who are trying to do something different, something positive, that they'll never let a regular guy become a symbol of peace.
I don't think anyone would confuse Detroit Red with a regular guy. But I'll say, for a man who was shot by somebody who looked like him, no matter who sent them, we gonna act like there wasn't no hate. Malcolm, just because it wasn't viral don't mean he didn't have no hate.
Also, we forget that how he was perceived in the media and probably by his own community at the time was a lot more controversial and chaotic than how we view him now with, all these years past.
Yeah, I think Malcolm X right now would look like Kendrick Lamar. I think Martin Luther King right now would look like YG the other day. It's Sunday. That's what they look like. They're still here. Modern day. This shit is, that's what that is. Malcolm X right now, Martin Luther King would have needed to march through Compton. He wouldn't have needed to march through Selma. Ain't nothing on fire in Selma. Some shit is on fire in LA. Some shit could be on fire. I'm talking about internal flames. Some shit on fire in the South Side where I'm from. It's on fire. It's dangerous. People dying over dumb shit. And it got to stop. Somebody got to stop that shit. And that's where you get the people that's willing to go do it.
And if it's really going to stop, though, it's going to require at least some people involved in this type of shit to be willing to say, like, all right, my homie got killed, but we're going to move past it. We're going to try to not have this vengeance just lurking in the shadows for a long period of time. Somebody like J Main is going to have to say, yes, I'm still hurt and angry that FBG Duck got killed, but I'm not going to use that as an excuse for me to wage war against a big chunk of Chicago as a result.
Yeah, I don't think it's my place to speak specifically on them brothers. I could speak hypothetically and from a perspective of how I can relate to it, but it ain't really my place to speak on their politics.
For sure.
But I do know that strategically, on behalf of melanated people, that a decision has to be made that it is superior to want positive outcomes and to want success for our children and the next generations, that is superior to continue to participate in what is an unmitigated and unadulterated genocide being committed amongst ourselves in this country. Period. And that's an easier sell. If I get specific, if I get specific right now, some of my little homies that have united and are healing wounds and stopping civil wars and stopping tripping off of who hang out with who, if we start talking about specific names, then I'm gonna have to go patch up some shit real quick because I'm gonna ignite feelings.
Right.
I lost some people that I love. If we get specific names, I might have a bad morning and be like, all these niggas if we get too specific, right? It's easy on the South Side to wake up and say, that nigga X-rated if you get too specific, right? So what we have to do is not have a myopic view of the issue and view the larger thing and say, what do we want for these babies? We all got them at this point, even the little homies. What do we want for them? Us, because at this point as parents, and the one thing we all got in common amongst mine is, man, the dopest dads you'll ever meet. I'm talking about one of my little homies, Hustle Man.
Yeah. Grown man shit. That Heike was talking about, that grown man shit.
What got to you right there, just thinking about him?
The little homie, a good dude. If you tell them to go, they gonna go. They gonna, all of them. He could send them. And he went to school, and he took his babies. Everywhere he go, he got his babies. And all he want to do is
That's the narrative that they never paint.
yeah, he want to raise them babies. Not only do he want to do it, he's doing it in the thick of it. In the thick of it. He ain't the only one. The homie Mac, they gave me with his baby. We call him FaceTiming. What's up, nephew? Pictures nobody will ever see. T-Nutty holding my sons. Blizzo and T-Nutty with my babies. Like, yeah, these some good men. Good men. For war and for peace. They good men. So, yeah. And we ain't the only ones. My nigga Meek, he's a good father. He raised his babies. He raised his babies. He helped raise me. My brother just happened to be a Meadowview blood. You know? I could jump a fence. I could walk out of the house on 24th Street, jump a fence, walk through a back door, and be inside of his grandmother's house on 23rd. That's how close. That's the distance between mortal danger and peace and the homies and not homies. Yeah, man. Everybody raising their babies. So that's bigger. Love and that kind of desire is bigger than hate, for sure. It's not close. And you either got to experience it. Hopefully people live long enough to become fathers, man, and get a bar. Unmitigated love. Ain't nobody ever going to look at you like that. I'm a whole superhero in my house. You know what I mean? I'm a Black Panther in my house. I'm not that up. I'm going to be for the rest of their lives. When I'm old and gray, you know? I'm gonna be 70 with a 20-year-old son. I'm proud of that. I want him for the rest of their lives. They gotta be able to look at me and be like, man, I f with you. That's valuable for me. I ain't the only one think that. Crip blood, everybody. And I want that for my nephews, my brother's kids. That's what I want. And so it's dope to be off parole and not vulnerable to getting through back in prison because I give a about my community, you know what I mean? We working on some shit. Right now, Dooney's saying, you know, you go to the Meadowview Community Center in our neighborhood and got to pay for everything. Say he tried to hold a hood meeting about peace. And the community center tried to charge him to have the meeting. Like, what? You know what I mean? That's the type of shit we got to work on. We got shit to do. Ain't nobody got time to be hating on nobody because of the street they claim or what color they wear and that shit. Ain't nobody got time for that shit.
You think a lot about how you're gonna explain everything that you've been through to your kids one day?
Oh yeah, that's why we gonna do this documentary and we gonna do this book. I went through different stages of writing, talking to God himself, writing, talking to my mother, writing, talking to myself, my younger self, and I feel like I wasn't anywhere as clear as I am right now, which is I know that everything I'm doing and what I'm communicating and expressing is for my babies. I never had that kind of clarity, you know? So it's necessary for me to tell the story and wrap that up in a way that they could be proud of, my family could be proud of, my community. This shit matter to me, man. Hella matter to me. I'm dead serious. We not f***ing around.
100%.
Yeah, we not f***ing around. You had the biggest mass shooting in the history of Sacramento occur. And there's people that didn't survive that in my music videos, right? That happened a month after I got off parole. And I gotta know mentally, I was gone. If I was on parole still and that happened, I was gone. It was easy to put one and one together and say, go get him. That would have been an easy call. It was like a month later. It was 33 days later when that happened. And we got people on both sides of that we just wanted. This shit got to get calmed down. We got to have some resolutions. These brothers got to start. We got to start getting this money and focus on these babies and that other shit. You know, it is what it is, and at least amongst ourselves at first, for us to establish peace amongst ourselves and understanding and communication and get back to like the homies are the homies. We love each other, and then you know you get that right. You know, fingers are weak. I can't knock a man out with a finger, but if I close it. You know, you can knock some shit out with a fist, and that's what we gotta do. We gotta form a fist amongst ourselves, and then we use that fist to knock out some of the bullshit that we need to get rid of, and then we can go into deeper than just our neighborhood in the gardens, Meadowview, that we can start extending that to other people coming from a place of strength. You know, that's it. You can't communicate from a place of leadership if you can't identify leadership. So that got to be done. And so, yeah, man, ain't nobody bigger than the program. Not even me. Nobody bigger than the program.
Right.
For sure.
No, 100%. We just got real there for a second.
Man, it was real it's been real ever since
you walked in?
Yeah, it was real September 14th, 2018. This shit been real since March 19th, 1992. This shit been real for a minute. Yeah.
There was something I did want to ask you about is I don't know if you're familiar with the King Von story, but that's been kind of a wild thing to see emerge in rap, having dudes, and there's been other artists since him and stuff who are basically like current popular rappers, but then some percentage of the fan base, especially locally, kind of knows about them having committed, you know, a lot of pretty heinous crimes. And allegedly, but you know, in some of these cases, it's like very, very unlikely that all of the things attributed to them would be alleged. But what is that like for you to kind of see hip hop going in that direction? Some percentage of hip hop, at least.
I think the exact same thing that happened to Von happened to me. And I think it happened at a time where, you know, if I went through that same thing right now, which is not legally possible, but if I did, it would be the same way, except I didn't die. That was the problem. I wouldn't shut up. I pop up here and there and disrupt the narrative that was being created. Is when you die, they get to deify you and put you where they want to put you, and they have machines in this machine, you know, to turn that into what they needed to be. Do I believe that baby was some type of vampire running around, you know? Should just You know, do I believe that? Believe it?
You're skeptical about it?
I wouldn't say I'm skeptical. I'm skeptical of the United States of America. I'm skeptical of the machine that would want to do that, imply that is a standard for a black male melanated person to strive for. That is something to be glorified. There's a machine. There's an energy in this country that very much would like for that to be an image for us to aspire to and be like, look at that. He was a serial killer. He was blah blah blah. You know. So there's a 10 on the 2. The 10 on that 2 might be significant compared to the average Joe, or even compared to a rider. You know, I know people who did a lot of shit, and when you know some of the stories become. The train leaves the building. That's what I mean. That's why I had to do that Vlad interview. The train left the building. X smacked this person. X smacked that. Remember that thing that happened? That was X. I had that going on, and so I know what happened to me. It makes me view all of that with a grain of salt. And the reality is that man lost his life. His family has to grieve the loss of him. He ain't coming back. His brothers have to grieve that loss, and they got to figure out a way to move forward from there. That's the extent of my input I got on that shit.
For sure. Makes sense. I also wanted to ask about this is, what's your relationship like with Brother Lynch Hung at this point? And did that ever falter over the years, or was that always a really close connection? Yeah,
me and Lynch always been close. Okay. We've always been close. I think being as close as we were, we had frictions. Especially, I think I'm responsible for a lot of that. Like I was a very, very aggressive kind of person. You know what I mean? And I probably wasn't the easiest person. Lynch still would tell a story. I remember we was in the studio arguing over a song, and Lynch is like, "It's my fucking song. You know, it's my song." And I wanted to do what I wanted to do. And Lynch, my big brother, and he telling me, "You got to do it like this." And I'm like, I heard you. And so I get mad. I stand up, and I took a strap out and put it on the console, and I turned around like, nigga, you know, to talk to him. It didn't have nothing to do with no weapons, no violence even, but it was like, I'm tired of talking about this now. And Lynch would still tell me that story, you pulled a gun on me. I'd be like, I ain't pulled no damn gun on you, cuz. I just put it up. I wanted to fight, maybe. But, like, that was the type of shit I was doing that I wouldn't think about. Man, there ain't a part of my soul man, if I could have erased that moment and not have done that to him, you know what I mean? That's my brother, somebody who's fought for me, who stood up for me, who I've always popped up when Lynch had a little bit of trouble, even when it was detrimental for me as an individual. I've always taken all Lynch's fades. I'm gonna keep doing it, by the way. And so, like, it's just one of them things where I was an ultra hyper aggressive person, and people had to know that I was safe to be around, if that makes sense. And so I think for me and Lynch, you just had periods where you had to give consideration. You know what I mean? I'm being all competitive about rap music, but some of my baby boys could be like that toward me now. You know, they rappers, they dope, they gangsters, all that shit. I can't want to be. I happen to believe I'm from a place that has bred some of the realest, most G-est motherfuckers in the history of the earth. I believe that about Southside Garden Block Crib, 24th Street, 29th Street, 21st Street. I think we some of the dopest niggas in the history of the earth. I believe it. So much so that them streets are comparable to, you could argue us toward whole boroughs of who's the dopest niggas. It's been in hip hop and in some street shit, from YAs to pit prisons. This shit is respected. I can't want to be from that tribe and not know that every now and then one of these little lions is gonna bite me. You know what I mean? I'm gonna get bit every now and then, and I've bitten Brother Lynch. You know what I mean? Sebo, and Sebo is you know, I gotta come from a tribe of lions. We fight. It's block recreation. We really with the shit, and so for that reason, every now and then somebody gonna get snacked on. You know, it's gonna be some shit, and you know, I feel like that has impacted my relationship with Lynch, and we at a point now where that's gotten addressed and dealt with. We had some dope ass conversations, man. He told me he proud of me as a father, that seeing me with my babies, he knew that what that was gonna do to me. He was waiting, you know, he got to have his kids. He's like, man, he's just so proud of me. And it's dope that we get to be in our places as me being I'm his baby boy, for real. I came out first. My music happened first because of the way I was moving. I was really, Lynch, but the big homie told me this the other day. I think that might have been you. The big homie told me Lynch and his crew was like Ozone and Turbo. And then me and Acebo, we was like Old Dog and Kane, right? And both these contributions to our neighborhood are vital, important, minus Lynch who was a musical genius and ahead of me in bars and measures and understanding how to execute. I just was moving faster. I had access to funding. I was in the streets. They sell me some dope, pay for my studio time, so I'm moving faster. I used to pay for studio time. Lynch would come in there and make sure my samples got organized, and then finish his song with the last 2 hours from my session. You know what I mean? Mm-hmm. So if I could get through a song in 4 hours, Lynch would use them last 2 hours to do some shit and work on his music. So I really came out first before Lynch and Bo because I was moving faster, and Bo was locked up. I remember when this nigga walked in the door from YA, nigga beautiful, Jerry curl with the looks in it, with the blue khaki suit on. I was at the homie AC house on the south side, AC and Black house on the floor with an Elise's drum machine writing a rhyme that ended up on Psychoactive. And Bo walked through the door and they was like, oh, it was Bo, you know what I mean? That was some dope ass shit. I was like 15. And you know, I think Bo, a few years older than me, and he's like 18, 19, and Lynch like 6 or 7 years older than me. So these are my brothers, you know what I mean? And I'm in a great place, me and Bo in a great place. We not doing no playing about each other. Me and Lynch in a great place. All of us together in a great place. The Block Movement 2 album is gonna happen, and that's a part of that unification that's occurring in my neighborhood. I'm dumbass proud of it.
There's another rapper from that era that might be getting released soon. Ooh, do you see yourself reconnecting with Six when he gets out?
Six is a tricky thing for me. So like, I do not, the answer is I do not, unequivocally. But the reason why it requires an answer is what happened with my career. Like, you know, because they all older than me, I was trafficking in a different circle than them in the South Side. I was with the baby boys, and then I go be with the big homies, do what I'm supposed to do, get what I needed, and go back to the baby boys. They was moving in a little bit different generation than me. They both from Lynch and Bo and them, all from a generation above mine. So my cousin Nicole Lee was dating Six. In December 17th of 1990, I remember specifically because it was my grandmother's death day. And at that time of our lives, we celebrated my grandmother's death day with having a family event. Big food, everybody chilling. So Nicole brings Six to the family event. And I had all my rhymes pinned like people put up comic books. I had rhymes all over my walls in my room. And the DJ that night was my boy Percy Hunter from the South Side, Flat Dogs. And Percy was in the room spinning the music, and Six ended up in that room because, you know, he drawn the music and he was an amazing artist. And he saw all them rhymes. He was like, who wrote this shit? And I was like, shit, me. And me and Percy had been making music. He had a 4-track recorder and a Elise's drum machine, that same one I had on the floor with when Bo came home. And so I had already made songs and shit. I just was making them at the homie house with records and a little 4-track and a little shitty ass microphone. And so Six was like, nah, nigga, you too dope. And so we gonna link up tomorrow. I want you to meet I want to bring my brother over here. And so he's like, meet my brother. That was how he framed it. And Six is from the Creek, from Glen Elders. You know, we got it's a lot of family on the South Side integrated like that. So Glen Elders is affiliated with peripherally to Garden Block. You know, we've had historical allegiances. But so Six, the next day we link up at Percy house and he walks in with Brother Lynch, who is famous in the hood at the time because this nigga would do acrobatic flips. That nigga could have won a gold medal for that shit. I'm talking about any flip you seen anybody do ever. Some Mary Lou Retton shit. That nigga had that Simone Biles shit. He could really do that shit. That nigga Lynch was amazing. And so he was always rapping and shit. So it was like, you know, like, goddamn, it's Kev. Nigga, you could have just said you was bringing Kevin Mann over here. And so we bust rhymes all night and shit and bam, bam, bam. And you know, because of Six, me and Lynch started hanging out and really getting into the music. So Six was the one who was the glue to kick off what became that run of Endangered, Niggas in Black, Nigga Deep, Psychoactive, and 24 Deep, Brother Lynch hung, if you take 6 out of that, I don't know that I'm sitting here today. You know what I mean? None of that, nothing that I experienced, good or bad. I don't know if I get to do none of it minus him. However, you know, it's certain shit you can't be accused of. It's certain shit you can't do, and I stand on that.
Because when I was looking into it, I heard interview clips of Brother Lynch Hung basically saying that he doesn't believe that Six did the things that he was accused of, which for the people at home who are kind of confused about what we're talking about, there's YouTube documentaries. His name is spelled S-I-C-X. You can dig into it yourself, but he was accused of some extremely heinous stuff. But then I listened to interviews with him from jail where he seems like he basically admits it and basically says that it was basically fueled by him sort of accidentally getting into meth, and that turned him into like a monster. I heard an audio clip of his son basically saying that he never had any negative interaction with his dad, which doesn't mean that he didn't do what he was accused of doing to his daughters. But I don't know. It's a messy situation. But I guess his plan is to get out of prison and to. He's devoted his life to Jesus, and he's planning on coming back out and getting back to the music. I would say that it seems unlikely that any large group of fans are going to accept him after a history like that.
I think that the earth is a very interesting place right now, and what people would and would not accept. I've seen a lot that I would assume wouldn't be accepted that was. And so for that reason, far be it from me to say what him or Jesus are capable of, but I can tell you what X is incapable of. And I'm incapable of fucking with somebody that was accused of that and that close or admitted it or anything like that. Them is it's unfortunate. There's certain codes that you can't walk the yard with. You got that code, it don't matter. I seen a man who had a reckless endangerment for doing a high-speed chase with his son in the car. Nobody got to really get into the story because he had to get stomped out. And because you don't get that code, it was the code more than it was the story. People don't really care. What you find out about if they care is if you die or if they just whoop your ass. And that's how you know people knew the story, but you got your ass whooped really good, or you just don't make it. And so I'm empathetic to his son. That's my nephew, Lil Six. I think it's unfortunate that he's associated with that. I think it's brave of him to take that name and to fight on behalf of himself and his family, and I'll support him in that. And I think it's up for that baby boy to have that, when we talk about what I want for my sons and how to be viewed, you know what I mean? That got taken from him in a way. And so I'm empathetic to him, and for that reason, I'm a very good uncle,
That must have been up for you to have found out that somebody that you had spent time around was capable of that kind of thing.
Shit. That shit, I ain't getting no calories off eating that shit. That shit ain't do nothing for me. Yeah, I wasn't up about it. I observed that shit. It's how much up shit I had to see, or some shit is just, that shit is in, and it's like, I go, oh, really? And then it's out. There's certain stuff I could hear that I ain't got to think a lot about it. There's certain shit I just ain't willing to burn no brain cells over, man. I ain't burning no calories. I ain't intaking or burning none over that. I hear this specific thing, I'm out. My brain don't belong there. My spirit don't belong there, and my presence don't belong there either, and theirs don't belong with me. And that's kind of how I see it. That's just my personal philosophy. I think that this is an opportunity for me to touch on something. I think all the people who, because it's a lot of people with commentary about what you're supposed to do. So what I think is we have, what is it, Megan's Law? Yeah, Megan's Law. And you can go and look, and all these tough ass dudes with commentary about a Six or any of that can Google their neighborhood and go drive over there and beat up all of the weirdos. They can go and punch on them and stab them. They live in your neighborhood where your kids are, right? So them same motherfuckers that want you to go beat one of them up on the yard or think we got to fuck Six up, I'm gonna need them to line these niggas up, and I need everybody to get up, and that's the green light. We purging these niggas, let's purge them. Until then, they all gotta shut the fuck up. Everybody full of shit. If none of these niggas free, none of them that get on the computer and got that shit in they house looking like neighborhood looking like that Kendrick Lamar cover for Not Like Us.
That's what I thought of when you said the next name.
They neighborhoods looking like that motherfucking picture that nigga Kendrick posted. And them same tough ass motherfuckers want to talk about what the homies got to do. Right. What the homies got to do and what we got to do to this nigga. Like, nigga, to line it up, run it, kick it off.
You're saying people should worry about their own shit before they start telling you what you're supposed to do?
Yeah, worry about my shit too, but get cracking. You know what I mean? That's how it is when it's time to get cracking. You came out here and this nigga got a problem with you. Ain't nobody taking your fade. You got to punch this nigga. But if you punch him, everybody getting their ass whooped. All his homies, everybody. But we can't punch. We can't kick it. He said that shit to you. Nigga. Oh, he ain't do shit. I'm going to buy me some ice cream, nigga, and mind my business. And that's the story for you. You got to walk around with that for the rest of your term. And I feel that way on the street too. That's how it is. So I see a lot of these people on these computers, and they like to make these commentaries about what everybody's supposed to do. Or a homie coming back from like Dooney did all that time. We get out. I got a condo in Oakland, already pushing the foreign. I'm going to work at my condo, at my headquarters for Blockstar, and that give me 8 hours and then some overtime. And then when I go back to the transitional house, right? So you got some transitional houses where these tough ass dudes, I don't want to be in a transitional house where none of these niggas is at. So that's how I found out Dooney got home. Dooney was in the cell in my room at the transitional house waiting when I came back from work. And it's like, you a lifer, you gonna refuse to go to the transitional house for 6 months so you could go home to your family, or you gonna beat up some of these weirdos and go back to prison? Or like, we gotta stop with this fantastical ass supreme robo gangster bullshit these niggas is on. This whole shit. Right. I'm hella glad I'm off parole. And to start talking about this shit, these bitch ass niggas ain't whooping nobody ass. Kick it off. Kick it off. I guarantee you, kick it off. We got it too. We'll cover ours. But we ain't gonna punch them first. We ain't driving up first. We ain't knocking on the first door. Everybody handle their business. We getting rid of all the dots on the houses then, if that's what we own. Or mind your business, raise your family, keep your children safe, and that's that. Because my babies wasn't in the transitional house. You know, my babies wasn't on the yard. It's your babies at your house. And you ain't doing shit in your own neighborhood. I think that's hypocritical to the degree where it gotta get called out. We can't have no healing if we still letting niggas play. They playing. I'm sick of the playing. It's a lot of people that I think are good men who making dumbass decisions because they care about the playing. They care about the responses from the people playing. And I'm like, I care about my babies more. I care about my future more than I care about niggas playing. And the niggas playing know who to play with. They know who to do that to. It's all good. But all that reckless shit is dead. I'm on parole. That shit is over with. Ain't no more reckless nothing. So anybody that think we should address 6, I say awesome. We are perfectly willing to do that as soon as they rid their neighborhood of all of them little dots. And they get cracked. Even one, just one of them. Maybe. Yeah, they were the one in their house. They were the one in your house.
For sure. All right, last question. You mentioned Blockstar, not your label, but the Pop Smoke's killer or somebody who was involved with Pop Smoke's killing. I took a lot of heat for interviewing him. What's your perspective on that, on platforming somebody who did something that is, quite clearly evil, and not just doing it, but doing it like 4 years after it took place?
I think that from a perspective of real journalism, I think it was perfect. I think you should have did it. I remember after our interview, you said some shit and I posted it. You was just like, man, this is what I do this for. And I think that people can confuse the character and the establishment you built for yourself with your intent and who you are as a specific person. And I think you caught some heat from people who assume that other things that you participate in, which is your business, is superior to if you turned around and did some journalistic shit. Because I don't see, it could be said, well, nobody should have interviewed him at all.
Right.
But if he got interviewed by 2020, I don't know if that shit still exists. I'm outdated, nigga. I'm outdated.
shit like
if
that.
this nigga got him interviewed on the NBC, right, and Lester Holt asked him all that shit, it would have been a normal thing,
Right.
because that was appropriate. But like I said, I needed hip hop to have done journalism on my circumstances specifically to get to the root of this shit. And if that had happened for me, I might have had a different outcome, because in the years leading up to me going to trial, hip hop spent them years repeating what the AP was saying, which was utter bullshit that was provable if somebody did some real journalism.
Right.
So I think we've been so far removed from journalism. I remember, that we got the Elliot Wilsons. We got people who this shit really used to kind of matter. There was a point, but especially during the Vibe run, where journalism mattered. You had to really, I remember Dream Hampton and Scoop, and it was people who really gave a about telling the stories of hip hop. That's why we got so much shit of Pac speaking on behalf of himself, or finding Ice Cube, young Ice Cube, with a lot to say. That nigga was on fire. He was tripping. He was not playing. And them interviews are out there because they was doing real journalism. So I think what we saw was you do some real shit inside of some fake ass shit, and people responded to it abnormally because it's like seeing the black cat in the Matrix, you know what I mean? It's a glitch in the Matrix for you to do some real shit in this fake ass shit. That's what I think.
I think a lot of people look at podcasting and they think that you should only talk to people who are, expressing virtue. And I don't think that's true. I think you can have conversations with people who've done horrible things, and I'm not going to let, and it seems so hypocritical to me because nobody ever gave me a hard time about having a conversation with you, even though obviously you had a incident in your upbringing that, some things took place that were very, very negative. But I don't think that's any reason to not have a conversation with you. And I think that the primary difference between why nobody ever gave me a hard time about having a conversation with you and why that Blockstar thing got so much heat is because he killed a famous person.
I
And
don't think so.
that doesn't seem like the right reason to treat these things like they're completely
I
different.
don't think that's true.
Okay.
In my circumstances, we lost a beloved member of our community. And so I value her more than I value Pop Smoke.
Right.
Sure. So I ain't gonna do that. But what I will say is what I think the reasoning is because I'm at a stage of my life where I can tell you what a parasitic organism is. I could tell you the definition of remorse, knowing sadness and bitter regret arising from the repentance of past misdeeds. I can tell you that, and this child can't because he's a child, right? I could keep my child on my insurance till they're 25 because that's my child. Your brain is not fully developed now. You can't get a life sentence because you're a child. But so you got to sit in this chair and do an interview and not be a child all of a sudden, right? So we have an absence of compassion. When we go get a rescue dog, would have got more compassion. This kid was the best he could. I heard him trying to accept responsibility, but he just left a place, which I commented on your post. He just left a place where the exhibition of remorse and understanding was a weakness that could have cost him maybe his ass, could have cost him his life in there to have been weak. There's people in there that was mad about Pop Smoke dying. He probably took some fade. Who knows? I ain't gonna speak on him too specifically. I hate when people did that to me. So I don't want to go too far. I'll say I have empathy for the fact that child is not developed in a way that would allow him to have communicated what he needed to communicate in that moment. And it probably was a learning experience for him to read the comments. That was probably the closest thing he got to a mirror. And maybe that was the thing that might save his damn life if he could just understand why people were outraged, because he had an absence of empathy and remorse. But when you sit in a chair and they sentencing you to life, and your lawyer is telling you don't express any emotion, and you're sitting there and everybody says he didn't feel anything, right? Because this motherfucker just told you don't express nothing, but they're gonna use that against you. So you end up then you go to a place where, hey man, if these dudes play with you, man, don't let them off. Take your pencil. That's your ass. They take it, and you ain't got nothing left to take. They gonna take your manhood too. You got to go and survive that, and then end up in this chair across from you and can't express remorse.
There was a moment in that interview where he seems like he's having such a hard time expressing any level of regret. And it's like, I just volunteered for him. I said, I used the example. I said, if I drove home from here and I hit somebody with my car, and it was like just because they ran out into the road and I killed them, it's like I didn't go out of my way to do that. I didn't want that to happen, but I would still feel horrible about it. And when I said the word horrible, he goes, yes, horrible. That's how I feel. And that to me was like, holy this kid is so a product of his environment, and he's still caught up in the ego and the boisterousness that you need to have as a gang member, that it's like incredibly hard for him to sit there and express any level of remorse, even though we are talking about somebody that was not from a rival gang. It was just a celebrity that they were trying to rob. And it was so hard for him to like even verbalize that. And I thought that was probably like one of the most fascinating moments in terms of just painting that picture of like what a young dude who grows up in this environment is basically trained to be.
And you just described on my behalf what I meant when I said that they were being controlled by a parasitic organism. You just described it eloquently. That was awesome. I don't got to do it no more. I'm just going to soundbite this shit and post it and be like, don't ask me no more. Parasite, this is what the that is. That's what was driving his car. He has to appease this thing and the people, the pressures, and not, what does this kid got to go back home to? What's in his living environment? What is the politics being pushed in that environment? Is there somebody expressing, it's safe to heal up. It's safe to come and say that shit was terrible, but he's still working that out. He's still getting there. I knew at the age of 25, like, if you listen to what I was writing, I wrote Misanthropy and Landed a Lost when I was 25. I wrote Deadly Game about the 3 strikes law when I was 22. But I faced the death penalty. I had to be like, whoa. I wrote Deuce Fight of Life about to go to trial. It was real songs and me trying to figure it out. That was my No Jumper interview as a kid, as a Blockstar. I just put it in the songs and figuring it out. And now people can hear me as a developed painting. So that baby is the Mona Lisa being painted. And we looking at him a third of the way done. And I'm all the way Mona Lisa painted, right? But I'm that kid too. I'm Blockstar. I'm where that name came from too. I'm where EBK came from too, right? And I'm a completed, painted Mona Lisa. And he was half done. He's partially done a third of the way. Right. We can't expect him. We can't look at him and say, is Mona Lisa smiling? Because the smile ain't painted yet. You know what I mean? So if he makes it, then we're going to see the potential of a phenomenal human being, because almost everybody I know who has reached a certain level of enlightenment that allows them to be a source of a caustic changing force in society has had a traumatic experience. That's the impetus of it. Your response to that traumatic experience is what makes you somebody who can make change, or makes you somebody who's going to be destructive. It's a crossroad. The trauma, the traumatic event, and your response, coming to understand it, is going to define how you impact the world the rest of your life. And I hope that your interview and the backlash, because it wasn't just you got some backlash, which you obviously could withstand. But he read it all because he's from that fast food generation. He cared about every comment. He read them all. He gonna care about this too. He's gonna care. And that was more informative than anything one of them doctors could have told him in that environment, because they didn't have him long enough. You know what I mean? I had to do I had to go through a forensic psychologist, like Clarice Starling coming to see Hannibal Lecter. And I had to score 25 or lower on a psychopathy exam to come home from prison. I scored 24, ironically. You have to, so in order to do that, you're not gonna get past those people playing games. You're gonna have to really figure this shit out. Me talking about a parasitic organism, man, because I read it and I thought my way into thinking that, like, damn, man, a gang is like, what the f***? That's how they define that? That's like what the hood did to it. Like, I had to learn my way into that. And then I was able to communicate it, and people was like, God damn, right? When I say gnawing sadness and bitter regret arising from repentance for past misdeeds is literally the definition of remorse. That kid couldn't tell you that. And if I tried to tell Commissioner Roberts that, playing with him, I'd still be there right now. because I'd have got a 7-year denial, and that mean that next year I would have been going back to the board in 2025. Right. I'd still be there. So I didn't get to play with them. I had to learn this shit, and by learning it and having a comprehension level because of my mother and Miss Maxine and my family having a culture of comprehension and reading, because the words were in my house, I was able to comprehend them when I read them. But I had to be exposed to that. They didn't have that shit in there. No. They didn't have that shit in there. Might have been one of the worst things that happened to me was if I got sent as a 17-year-old famous X-rated, got sent to a juvenile facility and released at the age of 25, bro.
Famous as
yeah, I've been famous as deified and dead. Yeah. Because somebody was gonna have to do it. Yeah. I was tripping. You think that little dude was tripping? If they let me out, I was tripping the whole time and didn't really know it. It was such a natural thing. That's the way it was. We were tripping. So I'm empathetic to the dude, man. I think that they did some dumbass shit. I've done some dumbass shit. Anybody really with the shit has done some dumbass shit. Well, all of us that's really with, it's stories that can't never tell nobody. We've done dumbass shit. That dumbass shit wasn't the only dumbass shit. We did some dumbass, that was an exclamation mark on some dumbass shit, right? So just like that kid, we've done some dumbass shit potentially, allegedly, maybe, possibly, Right. But I just think I could be empathetic to him, and I hope they whipped his ass in them comments enough to make him be like, wait a minute, like, am I tripping? And maybe he developed some vocabulary for reading what people saying he's supposed to. It's what you're supposed to do, because he's young and impressionable. You might have saved his fucking life, bro.
It's crazy because his Instagram got deleted, so I'm not really even sure what the fuck he got going on now, or
oh, he still could see
what the likelihood of him getting anything positive out of this situation is, because I've heard people saying that he was going to be a rapper. I don't know how likely that is.
That's a dumbass idea. If they deleted his Instagram, it's the best thing that could have happened for him. That's like giving meth to a meth addict. That young man need to be somewhere getting educated, sitting his ass down somewhere. I hope somebody pulled him and got him and start trying to teach him something, or that story is for nothing. You know the worst disservice you could do to Pop Smoke is for this kid not to develop into nothing. And I know that because the horrible disservice I could have done to South Sacramento would have been to be sitting here incapable of communicating what I'm communicating and have had that happen in my community. Right. It would have been the biggest disservice I could have done to just be some dumbass sitting here talking about, cuz we gonna, for me to be that person would have been the worst thing that could have ever happened to Southside Sacramento. That would have been the worst thing ever. So I think it's very important for us to have correct responses and to be able to develop and keep going. You got to know your story. I don't know about nobody else. I believe, and what happened with a lot of decisions I made, I believe that La ilaha illallah Muhammad Rasulullah, I believe the same thing that got a little Dirk driven out there. I believe that. And because I believe that my story cannot possibly be allowed to be that something destructive happened, and I inspired all this other destructive shit, and I died one day. Right. And now I'm a serial killer, right? And everybody running around with me on their shirts, representations of how tough they are. Right. Some kid in Iowa with an X-rated on his shirt because he's tough, right? No disrespect to gangsters in Iowa. But that would have been the worst shit.
But that is crazy to think about how, the fan base could have turned you into that if they had, well, and I guess realistically a lot of people did. When I first found out about you, that was definitely part of the narrative that people told me about it. Like, yeah, this dude's rapping over the phone. He did this, this, and this. That got my ears perked up. Like, really? Okay, I'm interested all of a sudden.
Yeah, it's some gangster shit. I meant that shit. I meant it in real time, and I mean this shit in real time. Same dude. I needed that. I needed all that. But we can't allow, if I don't finish the story, it's the worst thing that I could have ever done in my community, bro. This story got to end the right way. I gotta dictate the narrative. That's what the we gonna do for sure. That's what we're going to do. That's what we're going to do. You going with us or we going through you. That's where we at with it. We're going to get this shit established. We tripping for the right reasons now. And it's awesome.
For sure. Hey, thank you so much for your time. And I feel like we're 2 for 2 on classic interviews because I feel like we covered some very important ground here.
Yeah.
Hell yeah.
Yeah. And I think that this people forget our first interview, how fire that was. And then I was telling my agent that, my PR agent, you know, Richie a dope ass dude, worked with a lot of powerful people and shit, and we had conversation. I was telling him we had a dope ass interview. That was like interview of the year. And we ran it back, man. I with you.
Nah, with you too. I appreciate it, man. How come you never ended up on Vlad? You did the one over the phone, but then you didn't do one since you got out.
Yeah.
You ever have a conversation with him?
Yeah, there was some plans. I'm big on deliberate intent because I lived a life where I was floating in the wind and I just went with whatever. And so I felt like it was more appropriate for me to do certain things when I had certain outcomes. I am a believer that you can't wait for the perfect circumstance, or maybe you never take an action. You got to get cracking when even in the stages of uncertainty. But I believe that coming off of phenomenal outcomes with Tech N9ne and Travis O'Gwen and my brothers at Strange Music, to knock with Joyner Lucas, Conway, and Tech N9ne, and Rakim, Sign of 7 with Method Man, Prodigy, rest in peace, shout out to my brother M80. Like, for me to have been doing that and have an album dropping Friday, now it's time for me to run around and we gonna talk. And I needed to get off of parole because, you know, if I went to Vlad while I was on parole,
yeah, it would have been a little tight. You wouldn't have been able to say what you wanted to say.
I wouldn't have said what I was gonna say. And, you know, he would have played the little clip, had Trey D over my ear, trying to instigate some whole shit between me and the homie. I know Vlad was super respectful to me, and I know Vlad has his lane. Everybody got to get their bag and do what they do. I'm in my lane too. I don't bite on none of that other shit. I know we are who we are, and it's a lot of shit is circumstantial. But, you know, there was some potential for that, and maybe I would have had a negative experience, not been able to say what I want to say, and now I'm giving a half-ass interview, and so now we can obviously speak way more freely now than I could then, without fear of incarceration and negative outcomes and shit. So,
Sure.
yeah, man.
Tell them what you got coming up or what they should be looking out for.
Yo, so we working on releasing my new album, A Sin in Heaven, which is available now by the time you see this. A Sin in Heaven, new video, Ali Ali Oxenfree, featuring my little homies, T-Nutty, Bleezo, and my brother Tech N9ne, on a beat by L Fingers from South Sacramento. Nah, man, we bringing that funky shit. And man, you know, I got some opportunities for some shows, put some money in my house, man, feed my babies, man, and allow my brothers to put some money in their homes. Keep working on having peace in South Sacramento. Free B-Dub, that's what we on, 914 in the building. And that's pretty much where I'm at with it. That's it. G's up, foes up, nice. Yeah. What's up, big homie? What's up, big homie?
You already know what it is.
Hey, X-Rated, I appreciate you, dog. For real.
sir.
Much love. Thank you.
Yeah.
Living legend. Pay your respects. The man has lived quite a life. Amazing interview. Thank you so much. No Jumper, coolest podcast. Like, comment, subscribe.
Strange.
Woo.